Good morning, everyone. We have many distinguished guests with us today. Howard already recognized most of the names. I would like to especially mention Ambassador Kılıç, Chairman Jones, General Türkçe, Undersecretary Demir. Welcome, everyone, again. It is the second time that I have the privilege to welcome you at the annual conference. As Chairman of the Turkey-United States Business Council, my main objective is to increase trade and investment between the two countries. We want to strengthen bilateral economic relations because better economic relations are a means to increase the prosperity of both our great nations. But why is the Turkey-United States Business Council Turkey's oldest bilateral trade organization? And why isn't there another example of a 36th annual conference on bilateral relations with a different country, with, for example, Germany, our largest trade partner? Do hundreds of Turks loyally make the journey to Washington for 36 years running to attend this conference out of economic concerns alone? No, they do not. Of course, bilateral economic activity and its increasing potential are important, but economic relations can only reach their full potential in the context of a robust Turkish-American relationship that includes close political and security cooperation as well. It is widely believed that strong Turkish-American relations are crucial for global peace and stability. And without peace and without stability, there can be no trade and there will be no economic development. I've been attending this conference for 14 years now, and I strongly share that belief. Unfortunately, our relationship is being tested. Let me share a brief anecdote. Almost 2 weeks ago, at the coalition headquarters against ISIS at Incirlik Air Base, a group of Turkish and American officers came together. A Turkish military officer was about to receive one of the highest distinctions the United States military gives to allied officers. An American colonel bestowed the Medal of Honor on the Turkish officer, and in line with protocol, the officer took the floor to deliver his remarks. He briefly summarized the successes of the Turkish military operations in Syria. He especially emphasized the lack of civilian and friendly fire casualties. Then he said, "I would hate to hurt or offend you, but I cannot accept this medal, because those bestowing it upon me are in bed with my enemy, the YPG, and my honor prevents me from accepting it." I think it is important that we understand what motivated this officer. At the press conference after his first meeting with President Erdogan, President Trump emphasized the sacrifices Turks made in Korea. It started, of course, in Korea, but Turks and Americans have fought besides one another in every major conflict since the Second World War, from Korea to Somalia to Bosnia to Afghanistan. The common denominator has always been that we are two democracies, joining forces to defend shared values and interests. Today, the United States has chosen the YPG, a Marxist terrorist group, over a NATO ally to help defend the very values that YPG opposes. The last time that a similar transactional decision was made was in Afghanistan, when the United States decided to arm the Mujahideen, a decision that effectively created Al-Qaeda. Now, I'm a businessman. I understand the importance of transactions, but they do not last. Alliances do, principles do, and principles are not meant to be upheld only when tactically convenient. To neglect decades-old alliances in the face of tactical transactional needs is very risky. Although you may realize a short-term gain, you might find yourself alone when it really matters, when it's not about clearing a few terrorists out of a small town in Syria, but rather a more important, more existential struggle. Despite the occasional political turbulence in both our countries, we are still two democracies in a world where democratic governance is increasingly rare. The United States might be an older, more mature democracy, and Turkey perhaps a younger, developing one. But still, we share common values and common threats. For example, we are both interested in a peaceful, democratic Syria. And while certain groups are desperate to cloud our judgment, the truth is that the Turkish armed forces are still the only NATO army to put boots on the ground in Syria, fighting in the front lines against ISIS. We may suffer policy disagreements, but we have to remember these basic facts. There are plenty of problems in the world, and Turkey is one of the most dependable and few US allies that can help stabilize a chaotic region. And President Erdogan, whether you politically agree with him or not, is the only leader of a Muslim-majority country who, with credibility, can lead the prayer on Tahrir Square, but also emphasize the importance of secular government. I sincerely hope that President Trump and President Erdogan will establish a productive relationship, because however unsympathetic they both might seem to their political opponents, there really is no alternative to democratically elected governments working together to solve the many problems that we face. One of these problems is religious extremism, and Fethullah Gülen and his followers represent one of the most dangerous forms that it takes. As many of you have read in the media, I hired the Flynn Intel Group in 2016, before the election, with a mandate to help me understand where the Turkish-American relationship is and where it's going and what the obstacles are to the relationship. One of these obstacles, maybe the largest, are Gülenist activities on US soil. My aim was to commission independent research and to establish objective facts to help the business community understand and anticipate the effect of these activities on the overall Turkish-American relationship. Such work is very important because it took us, Turks, almost 40 years to fully understand what Fethullah Gülen's organization is about. Over time, dozens of articles and books were written, but the authors were either killed or faced false charges and disappeared in prison. It wasn't until Gülenists tried to overthrow the government, bombed our parliament, and killed hundreds of civilians that their true face became visible to Turkish society as a whole. Today, this is perhaps the only issue that all political parties in Turkey agree on, even the marginal opposition parties. So this is not a pro-government or a pro-Erdogan position. This is not a political issue. This is a Turkish issue. It is the concern of 80 million Turks. Yesterday at the summit in Riyadh, President Trump said the summit will mark the beginning of the end for those who spread terror. He said there can be no coexistence with this terror. There can be no tolerating it, no accepting it, no excusing it, and no ignoring it. 80 million Turks wholeheartedly agree, but change starts at home. Fethullah Gülen and his followers are responsible for terrorizing millions of Turkish citizens. If the United States is sincere, then it needs to stop tolerating Fethullah Gülen's presence in the United States. It needs to stop accepting it, stop excusing it, and stop ignoring it. Gülenists, by attacking and threatening people like me, are trying to deter legitimate engagements by friends of Turkey. But if we want our American friends to understand the danger that Gülenists represent in less time than we did, then we cannot be deterred. We will not be scared into doing nothing. We will engage more, not less, and we will relentlessly pursue the truth. Nonetheless, despite these recent challenges to the relationship, I remain confident that our two great nations will find ways to respond to each other's core concerns. And it is at events like this, with its long history of forging and strengthening ties, that our relationship grows. Thank you for your attention. I wish you all a productive conference. Before I leave, I have the distinct honor to introduce General Jim Jones. In his 40 years of service, he has served this country in various capacities. One title I especially like a lot, it's the Supreme Allied Commander Europe. After he retired, he also served as National Security Advisor. General, one of the best things about this job, I always say, is working with you. Thank you.